James Ashby, of course, running for One Nation. He is doing so in the seat of Keppel in Queensland at that upcoming Queensland election. And Linda Scott is free of all responsibilities, bar professional and personal, but of course we all know she's Labor to her bootstraps. But I want to start with something not quite as national as these things, not quite as international as Quad meetings. Interestingly, today, the Herald Sun had an interesting piece about the number of potholes that are turning up all over Victoria, and the expectation is that there will be even more of them turning up as the rain bomb comes in the next little while. Now, Linda, I'm going to start with you. The Australian government at all three of its levels gets more revenue than ever before, all right? The share of, I know we've had our discussion about whether local council gets enough of it, blah, 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 but all three levels have more money than ever before. They also have a lot more to spend than ever before. But what does it say about the fundamental failure of the system and how it has been designed, that it is Russian roulette whether a road will or won't have a pothole in it that will or won't damage your car?
Well, look, great introduction, but I don't agree with much of what you've said. I mean, we fought very hard as a local government sector when I was the national president up until very recently to ensure there was a real focus on road funding and that it came particularly from the federal government. You're right to say, Paul, that local governments attract about 4% of the nation's tax take. So in reality, the Commonwealth government collects the overwhelming majority, and we were successful in getting Catherine King and Christy McBain to double the amount of roads to recovery funding that would go to local government, from $500 million to $1 billion over the forward estimates. There were also really significant increases in black spot funding, in heavy vehicle funding. So look, the funding is increasing, let's be clear about this, but also, of course, like everybody's household budget, the costs are increasing and the number of potholes are in many areas increasing because of the weather.
So,
now,
I'll get lots of abuse. We're going to say climate change and potholes?
I'll get lots of abuse for this, but it is true that it is the case that rain bombs, more severe weather, climate change means more potholes.
Sure, but okay.
And they're expensive to fill.
But as we have discussed in the past, right? Sorry, James, I promise you're getting ready to go and you're getting on in 30 seconds, right? But Linda, my issue has always been, right, which is that I understand that local council needs to have a library, it needs to have a childcare centre, it needs to have a swimming pool, all of those things, right? But it also turns around and offers jobs for like $150,000 to people to work on their website or community outreach or diversity officers. My point is, if you literally don't have $150,000 to fix the potholes, how do you have $150,000 for the diversity officer?
Well, look, if you don't have $150,000 to support the childcare, then the people who go and fill the potholes can't go to work because they've got, no childcare. We saw these kinds of things opening up during COVID and they were really problematic. So, look, the communities need support. What's happening in Sydney is different to my lovely friends in Alice Springs. You've got to fix the potholes, but I want to say these councils need more funding to do that. But it was good for the government under Labor to double the funding for roads to recovery.
But the climate change and potholes, James, how will that play in your poon?
Yeah. Well, I have to admit, New South Wales roads are probably the best on the East Coast. Queensland, dreadful. Victoria, not as dreadful, but they're getting worse. And, the figures speak for themselves. What I found amazing in that report too is the shelf life of a road is 10 years. I didn't realise that. And so therefore they need resheeting or ripping up and starting again. Here in Queensland, mate, for those Victorians who think they'll flee Victoria for better roads in Queensland, don't bother, we're worse again. But when you're paying $5 million a kilometre to produce roads now, single lane roads here in Queensland, right across the country, these are figures that came out in a Senate inquiry in our federal parliament, $5 million per kilometre per single lane of road. It's disgraceful where the cost is going. The other point too is we are now collecting the most amount in excise that we ever have before, 50.6 cents for every litre you put in your car. You chuck that in, plus GST on top of it. There's no excuse. The money's there, except the fact is that money goes into consolidated revenue. It is not specially dedicated to our roads any longer.
Bloody oath. Such a great point. Any government that actually turned around and offered a bill to quarantine that money, it'd be interesting to see which way the major parties voted on it. I would be surprised if they went anywhere near it.